girls didn't want no guy like me. Only want that ride when I feel that speed. So clear, should have seen the sign. Had a fear you was never mine. So won't you pack your bags and leave? On a bad boy to flip, type of girl regarded as my bit. On the side she be wrong to think, won't care, cheat your arm for as long to link. And they gone where you needed a shrink. The press and the stress, what a bad boy bring. Just there for the six, believe. Ask for the rest and he won't agree. Then you're on your knees just begging it, please, for me to take back. Crazy cat, it's never that if you act like scat. See a stack as you jump like Jack. Hit the road, never half look back. Tell her you sell out or make her sad. Must be mad to think you're boss. Be the lad to see your loss. Gotta wear my heart on chest. It's out of my respect. Should lay your mind at rest until you know your closet's fresh. The difference we both see is being clear of problems when you keep it near. Them girls didn't want no guy like me. Only want that ride when I feel that speed. So clear, should have seen the sign. Had a fear you was never mine. So won't you pack your bags and leave? Them girls didn't want no guy like me. Only want that ride when I feel that speed. And I hear you think you bad. Sinks in, must be mad. I won't trust when you come back with your please. Them girls didn't want no guy like me. Gonna get no sympathy. Just keep playing your symphony. What was done left pain, so don't explain. Ain't a fact, it's in the past. It's that it's in her life. Just wish she wouldn't miss that tie. Come and read this bottom line. Can't deny that it cost over more than she made out. Would've told her my mind that I won't reply. Don't wanna find out over time. In her mind believes you'll manage. In her eyes can see it as baggage. Too kind when you think it's fine. Then why did it eat her up inside? Cause you got here, now she shares. Understand that's unfair. Was a point you just lost care. Cupid won't float there. Don't make it dead just cause you said it. Now it's in your head, you'll never forget it. Them girls didn't want no guy like me. Only want that ride when I feel that speed. So clear, should have seen the sign. Had a fear you was never mine. So won't you pack your bags and leave? Them girls didn't want no guy like me. Only want that ride when I feel that speed. And I hear you think you bad. Sinks in, must be mad. I won't trust when you come back with your please. Them girls didn't want no guy like me.
Don't get it twisted or title, miss it, I'm no insomniac. Starting like a junkie to drugs, but after dark with my crush be at. Turn top when the lights turn down, vampire your life, but ain't on where blood be at. More on where the fun be at, and the rhythms will have you jumping like Jack, and the rhythm will have you taking steps back. Chilling in city, call me a saint, place packed in the drinks we have be stacking like racks. Whole bottle of drunk with that face, in fact. Lifted but no tow truck, public offense what we roll up, cause it's too loud, won't slow up. No brakes on someone when they rig the bus. Heard him on it, but we're still late back. She made me stand up, but still I'm laid back. Saying I'm a player, she don't play that. I said it might look different when you press playback. Now I'm lighting up, though I said it ain't brighten up. They repeat the cycle till I lighten up. Say I got a screw loose, won't tighten up. Car among the stars where you're sighting us, so it's visible we ain't the same. But I'm telling them to hate the game, not the player car, not a main about to change. And it's been like that from day. The vibes where the freaks all rave, the lives where the freaks all crave, the nights when the freaks all play, and I'll be like that until their last day. We ain't getting no sleep for the night, we be looking at fiends. We ain't getting no sleep for the night, we be looking at fiends. We ain't getting no sleep for the night, we be looking at fiends. We ain't getting no sleep for the night, we be looking at fiends. We ain't getting no sleep for the night, we be looking at fiends. We ain't getting no sleep for the night, we be looking at fiends. We ain't getting no sleep for the night, we be looking at fiends. We ain't getting no sleep for the night, we be looking at fiends. All looking like fiends. Craving for the sun's retreat. Gone off that steam. No iron, still time that I straighten that crease. Touch roll like I got 4 wheels. No river led drop, but I'm out for the thrills. trust, get the mood right. You'll be a whole gang of people changed with the moonlight. All turning to animals. On feeding their feasting, I drop out to have them all. No need to hold back at all. Ain't nobody judging or leading their back and walls. Ain't in no track no more. Leave all that at the door. We don't adapt to law rebels without the war. Cause we don't wanna hurt nobody, but try me and you won't dance, still hit the floor. But that ain't what I'm in it for. But give him a sec, 1 minute more. Still, it's all part of the scene, but have big cause one if you act up scene. Car, man don't take things lightly, nah, especially at night. Has so many brothers wanna fight me, so when I swing my left it goes right. Back to tight bodies, entice the body, one link me like lollies. Get loose, no molly, which leads to Johnny, not naming names. I keep it player, no games, the vibes. Where the feet so rave, the lives. Where the feet so crave, the nights. Where the feet so play, and I'll be like that until the last day.
The night.
We ain't getting no sleep for the night, we be looking at things. We ain't getting no sleep for the night, we be looking at things. We ain't getting no sleep for the night, we be looking at things. We ain't getting no sleep for the night, we be looking at things. We ain't getting no sleep for the night, we be looking at things. We ain't getting no sleep for the night, we be looking at things. We ain't getting no sleep for the night, we be looking at things. We ain't getting no sleep for the night, we be looking at things.
Where you can own your own plane, no one knows your name, and we're all the same, no one takes the blame.
So we fly, and 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 we fly, fly, fly.
It's the night.
We ain't getting no sleep for the night, we be looking at things.
It's the night.
We ain't getting no sleep for the night, we be looking at things.
It's the night.
We ain't getting no sleep for the night, we be looking at things.
It's the night.
We ain't getting no sleep for the night, we be looking at things.
It's the night.
We ain't getting no sleep for the night, we be looking at things.
It's the night.
We ain't getting no sleep for the night, we be looking at things.
It's the night.
We ain't getting no sleep for the night, we be looking at things.
It's the night.
We ain't getting no sleep for the night, we be looking at things.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Lobby. It's our weekly show where we talk about video games, and in a world where so much awful stuff is happening, I think we all can use a little bit of an escape. We got a lot to talk about today, including Dishonored 2, Watchdogs 2, Pokemon Sun and Moon, some updates for Battlefield 1, but it's also the 15th anniversary of Xbox, if you guys can believe it.
Yeah, and today, it's not even this week, like today,
Right,
was the official launch of the original Xbox 2001.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
So I'm joined by Scott Butterworth.
Hello.
And Jake Decker.
How's it going?
Good, man. It's good. I'm just trying to sort of silo myself in a world of video games and keep my head buried.
Yeah, part of me just wants to be like, everything's terrible, let's talk about that. But I agree, escape is something that some people need right now.
Right. So
games.
Let's look back to a better time.
Yeah.
The Xbox One launched November 15th, 2001. A few short months after the Dreamcast was basically discontinued and there was a gap in the console market. And here comes Microsoft with a massive, heavy machine.
Yeah, with a controller almost the same size.
Yeah, the Duke, right? Is that what it was
I
called?
think so.
I can't remember if that was the official name or just the nickname. I think that may have actually been the official company
Internal,
name.
yeah.
Because the S, like the much more like boringly named S, was the follow-up controller that was much smaller and which is more wieldy in general.
Yeah, it did improve over time.
Yes.
Yeah.
You could knock someone out with the smaller controller.
God,
for sure.
it was such a like, I don't know, such an easy to mock thing. I remember there being like, this was the early days of internet memes, right? But this was already like a huge running joke anywhere you went on the internet. Deservedly so. That controller was terrible, but the console was like shockingly good.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, the biggest thing about the original Xbox was just going into it feeling so skeptical, like just scoffing at the notion of this PC company stepping into the console market. 'Cause I was in high school at the time, so I was like still had a bit of that like fanboyism in me.
Yeah.
And had been a big Nintendo fan growing up. I'm just like, who does Microsoft think they are making a console? This is ridiculous. This will never work.
Well, and
then, of course,
especially
it did.
like after a couple years of playing Dreamcast games, like I in particular was in love with the Dreamcast, and so I was heartbroken to see it go.
Yeah.
And yes, here comes Microsoft of all companies with a brand that is this sharp green X. It looked very aggressive. Like it didn't make sense. It didn't fit into what I think a lot of us thought consoles were, in part because Microsoft wasn't a console company, right? Like they worked with software mostly. They had some hardware experience, but this was their first jump back into that.
Yeah,
after a long time. And the console admittedly was kind of strange, right? It was like super powered, but it wasn't refined. It was basically a PC in a little box. But
Yeah.
because it was so powerful, we got a game like Halo Combat Evolved, which kind of evolved a lot of things about console gaming by making it, competitive with PC in the sense of competitive shooting being a thing. Did you guys have like fond memories of that? Because I was a PlayStation 2 Dreamcast guy. Xbox kind of washed over me until 360.
360 was definitely more of a big deal for me. Well, actually, and I want to point out one really, really important thing about the original Xbox that dovetails nicely with what you were saying is the arrival of Xbox Live a year later. So that didn't happen until, I think, exactly a year after the original launch. But Microsoft was arguably the first company to get an online network right. Like, you could play games online on Dreamcast, and you could play games online on
You
PS2
could play
by that
games
point.
online all the way back to the NES.
Okay,
So-
well, yeah, technically. Were you playing online in the...
No, but in Japan there were games that would use like it wasn't.
Okay, I guess
it wasn't
that's
in the
true.
direct sense that you're thinking, but it was like the start of that.
Yeah.
But yes, Microsoft certainly established like, look, here is a front, or like a software basically space that you can access all the stuff that you
Here's
want
a
to do.
dedicated UI.
Yeah,
like
you've
you
got
can have a gamer
friends,
tag.
you
You
can-
can have
right,
a friends
exactly,
list.
yeah.
Like that was new and that was amazing. And Halo was a big part of like that. The marriage of those two things, like Halo 2 plus Xbox Live, was like it was the biggest thing on consoles for years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Bungie was really kind of what figured that out with Halo 2. Like Microsoft had the infrastructure for Xbox Live, and then Bungie was what actually put those pieces together and had I think they had friends list first and like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Although even the original Halo, like you're mentioning, like I remember playing split screen in college. So I lived with a bunch of people. Like I personally never owned an Xbox, but I lived with people who did. So I just played all of their games. And I remember like coming home after class to find everybody just sitting on a couch playing Halo. Green Halo, like the tiny 4 boxes on our crappy television. Even that was just such a joy at the time. It really came out of nowhere. It actually the Xbox was a much stronger competitor to the PlayStation 2. Really was going
Right. Arcade games, which is what
Yes.
Sega was basically still courting.
Yeah.
After maybe Dreamcast, Xbox were published on the Xbox as well.
Shout out to Yes, you're right. The
Yes.
sequel was what actually came out on
Yeah.
Xbox, but they eventually ported anyways. The series is great.
But so let's talk about the Xbox 360 now, because that was obviously where Microsoft, they were established at that point. And when the 360 came out, it was well ahead of everyone else.
Yeah.
And they certainly, they found a way to make a smaller console. And with that, they ended up launching really, really big series like Gears of War. And we didn't mention Fable at the beginning as well, but Fable, again, continued on at 360 as well as Halo and blossomed quite a bit. But we also got things like the Kinect.
Well,
not everything was.
There have been some. I think every console's endured a few missteps, right? I mean, even if you look back at, poor RIP Dreamcast in general, right? Like it was a little too ahead of its time, and Sony's had just as many stupid peripherals that completely failed, right? I mean that happens, but I think most of Microsoft failures didn't come until later, and I think that the launch of the 360. On the heels of, it was very clear that they learned a lot of lessons from the original Xbox. I mean, the original Xbox was a really powerful machine, as you pointed out, but unrefined. The 360 was, okay, what if we polish these edges and offer something that's a little more friendly? You could argue that's the exact same thing that Microsoft did in the 80s, and that's why, Windows became the standard operating system over what was arguably, that was part of what led to the company's success in the first place. So they kind of did the same thing again with the 360.
Yeah.
And I still love the Blades interface. I think that was a really great,
It worked.
that original. Yeah, I really liked it. So they clearly learned some lessons.
They also launched it a year before the PS3, which I think helped a lot.
And the price, it was
the price was a
$100
huge
lower.
deal.
You guys are leading me so well, you don't even know. Both of the things you just mentioned, it's fair to say those are probably the reasons why the Red Ring of Death became such a problem for Microsoft, because they cut back on manufacturing costs and they rushed a product to market before they were able to really test it to the extent that it needed. And I can't even count the number of Red Ring Xboxes we've had in this office.
Yeah.
I think when I joined, we had a stack.
I had 3.
You had 3 personally?
I had 3 by myself.
I got so lucky. My original 360 didn't die until I think after I had a PS3, actually. It lasted a very long time. It hung in there. So
Lucky you.
Yeah. No, I did. I got very lucky. But I also, my very first job in the industry ever was I was an intern at the official Xbox magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we had a stack of red-ringed Xboxes. A literal, it was just it's another
a
one
graveyard.
for the pile.
Yeah, we had at least a dozen here in the office.
Yeah,
at least.
It was madness. And from what I remember, Microsoft was pretty good about it. You could actually send them an Xbox and frequently you could get it repaired, but it was only within a 3-year warranty, I want to say. So some people totally got screwed.
There was they would send you a self-addressed box that you could send back, and there were certain people where if you bought it after one date, they would extend your warranty for a year. So, they did a pretty good job of picking up the pieces, definitely, but they also took a huge loss.
Yeah. Well, and it shouldn't have been a problem in the first place.
No.
It's crazy that was this major consumer product was just inevitably failed. That's nuts.
I haven't seen something like that again since maybe the Samsung Note 7 recently, right?
Right. Although that's kind of a different story in a way, because it was just third-party batteries. It's kind of different, but similar. You're right. A massive failure on this huge scale. Yeah.
So Microsoft is obviously still going very strong with the Xbox One, and in particular, the S has sort of really boosted sales for them. It's really helped out, I think, from a product design standpoint, but also just because it's cheaper now. And it's been outselling PlayStation 4 rather consistently over the past few months. But here again, we see Microsoft maybe going back to their old ways when all the stuff that is now exclusive to Xbox One from them is going to be playable on PC as well. So the Xbox One at this point is sort of more of a platform than a console in a way.
Yeah, they're clearly going for the unifying their synergizing their brands.
It's smart. I think it's about time
From a company
frankly.
standpoint,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that this current console generation is, in my mind at least, this is going to sound like an oversimplification, but I think it's a really interesting flip-flop of the roles that Sony and Microsoft played in the previous generation, where Sony sort of arrogantly presumed that the success of the PS2 meant inevitable success for the PS3 and charged a ridiculous amount for this overpowered machine and
Convoluted machine, really.
yes,
Yeah.
that was apparently very difficult to develop for.
Yeah.
I don't make games, so I have no idea. But consistently, we heard from developers that the PS3 architecture was a bit of a nightmare. And then this console generation, it seems like Sony actually did learn from that feedback and offered a machine that was cheaper and easier to design for. And PlayStation Plus has consistently been a really good deal for people.
Yeah.
Whereas the Xbox One, they had all these ambitions that they immediately walked back when they received pushback at the initial announce, like the mandatory cloud storage and
That was
always
something else.
online, like
Yeah.
these ideas that actually weren't terrible but were presented in absolutely the worst way possible, and then they immediately backed out of all that stuff. And I feel like it's left the Xbox One in this kind of weird limbo that it has now recovered from, but it took a couple years.
Yeah, I think it just needed to sort of be a reasonable alternative, right, to PlayStation 4 without having these weird, like earmarked, like, you know, either caveats or benefits that maybe people didn't understand, right? That just people weren't asking for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely agree.
And we got Scorpio coming out in
It's the next step.
less than a year, I guess.
Yeah, that'll be the next milestone in the history books of Xbox, right? So we'll see. I don't even really have any like big predictions for that yet because there's still so much we don't know.
True 4K gaming, Scott.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We shall see.
All right, if you have any fond memories of the original Xbox or the 360 or the Xbox One, let us know in the comments below. Scott, you were the reviewer for Dishonored 2 for us, and you quite liked the game. Am I right?
It's fantastic. It's a really, really great game. And I had people yelling at me in the comments for not giving it a 9. Like I gave it an 8 out of 10.
Wait. People are being rude in the comments?
I know, right?
They're mad about your score?
Unprecedented. You wouldn't believe. Like this is unheard of behavior.
So tell me, you know, what is fundamentally different this time around about the game?
Sure. To be completely honest, it's not drastically different from the first game. I mean, it still plays on all of the same major pillars. It is both a stealth and an action game simultaneously. It allows you to play either way, feels fully fleshed out and robust. I mean, they've certainly added new options for both play styles since the original game, but the core, like the fundamentals of what makes Dishonored work are the same as they were in the first game. So that's like player creativity, being able to approach situations from different angles, high chaos versus low chaos, like basically killing people or not killing people. There's still story-driven ways to deal with all of your major targets. So a lot of the principles that guided the first game are still present in this game. But there's a new protagonist, Emily Caldwin, who was very young in the previous game. She's now aged 15 years, and she's the second playable protagonist and has her own set of powers. So you can still play as Corvo, the original hero, and still have all his original powers, but now you can play as Emily as well. So they've definitely added stuff without fundamentally altering what the game is.
So do those two characters feel like really different? I mean, obviously the power sets are different, but like in practice, you know, like in terms of how you approach a mission, do you feel like it's worth playing as both?
Yes and no. I mean, to me, what's more interesting about choosing how you play is going loud or going silent. That to me is a much bigger decision. Emily and Corvo in most ways are identical. Like movement and basic melee, things like that are essentially identical between the two characters. The biggest differences are the powers that they have access to, but even those, there are often analogous powers. Like, for example, Corvo has Blink, so he can teleport around, and Emily has Far Reach, which functions very similarly and allows her to access distant places. So it really just depends on like what powers sound interesting to you. And if you've played the first game, definitely check out Emily because all of her powers are super cool and clearly learned lessons from things people wanted out of the first game. So you can like hypnotize enemies with her. You can turn into like a moving shadow and assassinate people. So it just kind of depends on what sounds interesting to you. The bigger choice really is, are you going to try to play stealthy or are you just going to like wreak havoc? And that to me is actually, I mean, I talked about this in the review that I really like stealth games and I generally will play stealth if that's an option. But messing around in Dishonored is so much fun. Like all the different things you can do. There's, from throwing people into electrified gates to, stopping time and placing them in front of their own bullets, things like that. I mean, just the amount of creativity you can employ while making your way through the game is kind of unlike anything else. I mean, it's not completely new. I mean, we've seen it in games like BioShock, but I think that Dishonored probably does it better than any game currently available. And that is what makes it an amazing game.
Jake, how did you play? I know that you played a lot as well. Are you stealthy?
So my main game, I mostly play stealthy. Like that's how I play game. Like when I can, I always do stealth. But I've played.
Why?
It's more satisfying.
Okay.
I think it's more satisfying. It takes a lot longer though. But to be honest, I've played through at least the first 5 missions, maybe like 6 or 7 times now, just for like capturing different things. And I've played stealth. I've played assault. I've played high chaos. I've played low chaos. And like Scott was saying, like whatever you play, you're probably gonna have fun. But I think maybe don't play it 5 times, but I think this game really shines when you start playing it a second time, because then you feel more comfortable with what you can do and your powers and like different pathways. It's second time is so much fun.
There's definitely a learning curve. Like once you kind of understand how the game operates and what you can kind of do within the confines of the world, you start to have a lot more fun. Like the first couple hours, actually, I almost didn't enjoy the game because I was just so like bewildered and frustrated and like couldn't do exactly what I wanted to do. And then finally figured out like, oh, okay, this is kind of how this game just works. And once I kind of got into it, it really opens up. And yeah, if you're able to, and willing to put in that time up front, you're absolutely rewarded for that initial investment.
And you were saying that in your review, like at the end of the game, you felt as though that you had kind of mastered all of your tools, and the game didn't meet you halfway. It didn't continue to ramp up the challenge or offer like a new scenario that you just hadn't encountered before. Can you, I guess, describe that a little bit? Like why?
Yeah, I definitely want to
missing?
expand on this because this was something that was difficult to articulate and something that I think a lot of people took issue with in the comments. So I'm going to do my best to like explain it more thoroughly now because it was hard. Like I hate seeing in comments people being like, I don't understand this point, or like
Right.
I don't understand this criticism, because that means that I kind of failed in that, at least in that portion of the review. So the best way I can explain it is, as you play the game, you're gathering runes, you're unlocking new powers, you're upgrading pretty consistently. You don't have to, like you can ignore powers completely if you want, but part of what makes the game fun is unlocking new powers and seeing what you can do with them. To me, that's kind of like the engine that drives the entire experience forward. So as you do that, as you unlock these new things, you are inevitably becoming more and more powerful. You can do more stuff. The stuff you can do is leveled up and has a bigger impact on the world, is simply more powerful. So your character is kind of on an upward arc throughout the entire experience. And the game, the difficulty and the challenge is also on an upward arc, but it doesn't quite keep pace with your growth as a character. So by the end, I felt like my level of power had exceeded the challenge presented by the game. And I don't mean, oh, I wasn't dying enough, or, oh, I wanted to like, take more damage from enemies and, deal less damage to them. I just mean like, I wish there had been more scenarios that had challenged me in new ways.
Intellectually, right?
Yeah, like, so I have all these new powers, give me new things to do with them, present me with new situations where I have to rethink the things I've been doing all game. Yeah. Because by the end, I was actually thinking less about what I was doing because I was so much more easily able to make my way through things. And I feel like it should kind of be the inverse. So again, that's difficult to explain if you haven't made it through the end. I had a bunch of people be like, I played the first 5 hours and this game is brilliant. I'm like, talk to me when you get to hour 16, because it's not like the game gets bad. I just wish there had been more of a culmination. I wish that all of the different things that had been thrown at you kind of came together in like really grand challenge at the end that really made you rethink the way you've been playing the game, or challenge you to use all of your different options sort of in concert with one another in a new way.
Yeah.
Anything like that. And it's not like the game fails to do that. I just wish it had done it more. And part what sort of compounds this problem is that there's no sort of new game plus option. So by the time you make it to the end and by the time you've unlocked all these powers, you really only have like 1, maybe 2 levels in which to use those powers, because you can't backtrack.
That's true.
And use the stuff you've unlocked. So like, hey, I have this cool new tool. Like I have this thing I unlocked that I want to try. You only have a really short amount of time to actually do it.
That's
because
a real bummer.
You've run out of game. And there's no way to go back. Like,
Right.
if you've saved at every level, you can go replay a level on a higher difficulty, but you still don't have the new powers that you earned by the end of the game. So you get to the end and you've unlocked all these powers, and then you're just done, and they're just gone. And it's like, that's kind of unsatisfying. So again, it's not like this is a massive failing on the game's part, but it's something that I found to be a bit of a letdown when I made it to the end. Yeah. So that to me is part of why I scored it. And I did grapple with the score. Like, I absolutely flirted with the idea of giving it a 9, but this discussion is in part why I lowered the score. The other big reason is the story, but I feel like I've kind of droned on a lot about the game already, so we can get into story if you want.
Oh,
but
Jake,
I do have a question though, because one of the big problems, criticisms, I guess, with the first one was that the ending kind of like punished you if you chose to play High Chaos. Now, obviously, don't spoil anything, but like, does the ending feel like you're being punished if you play a certain way?
It didn't. No, not really.
Okay.
Although, interestingly, the game, at least from a narrative standpoint, goes out of its way to encourage you to play stealth. And there's nothing mechanically forcing you to. You're not really punished. But at the very beginning of the game, the outsider, who's this character who gives you your powers in the first place, has some line where he's like, are you clever enough to save the world without spilling a river of blood? Like, sort of goading you into playing stealthily.
Yeah.
And there are sort of narrative consequences for playing High Chaos, but I don't remember there really being any in my sort of like 2 playthroughs. No, I don't think I was really punished, or like it was.
Yeah, because the first one, it was like you killed too many people, rats took over the city, and everyone's dead. It's like,
So that
all right.
does kind of happen. So the game absolutely changes. Both the narrative and the world itself change depending on how many people you've killed. So in this game, rather than rats, it's blood flies, who are like flies that spawn in the bodies, like in dead bodies. So you'll see more of them, but they're also not like a huge threat. So it kind of makes it more difficult to access certain areas. But generally, there are no areas that are completely blocked off. It's just like, oh, you've now made your own life more difficult. It doesn't close doors. It just like pushes them like, you know, it just makes your life a little trickier. That's all. So it's not really a punishment. It's just like feels like an actual consequence for the way you've chosen to play the game. So I really like the way that the game handles that, actually. I think it's really impressive the way that they sort of scale the experience depending on how you've chosen to play.
Okay, final quick question. Sure. Any differences on PS4 Pro?
I've not had a chance to play the game on PS4 Pro. I know that people were having some trouble on PC, and I played the game on PS4, so I apologize to PC gamers who may have wanted insight into their particular platform. But my understanding is those problems didn't necessarily affect everybody, and many of those have already been resolved. So apologies to PC players if you were experiencing issues. But with any luck, the game itself, when it's functioning as it should, is excellent, and by all accounts, it is functioning as it should for most PC players at this point. So apologies for not pointing that out to PC players last week. In terms of PS4 Pro, hopefully we'll have a chance to sit down and play that a bit this week. Haven't had a chance so far, so unfortunately I can't weigh in yet.
All right, no worries. Thank you for all your thoughts on that game. Dishonored 2 is out now. You can go check it out. Make sure to check out Scott's review on GameSpot.com and the video review on YouTube, and leave us some comments. Let us know what you think. All right, Scott, I have to say goodbye, unfortunately. Yes. I'm wondering if Justin Haywald is going to be here on time. What do you guys think?
Late.
Do you think he's going to make
Mike
it?
was right.
I'm listening for the door to crack open and assuming that will be Justin entering. Given that it hasn't happened so far, I may just continue to sit here as we wait for Justin, or I can leave.
We're running slightly ahead of schedule, but okay. I feel like at this point, someone out there is scrambling to go get him.
There's a really good chance that Mary is like sprinting to Justin's desk currently. Justin's going to wander in a huff. And you guys talking about Watchdogs 2 later, right?
We're going to talk about Watchdogs 2 later. Oh, wait.
It's Pokemon right now.
Here's some stuff happening.
Well, there's activity. Yay! It's Justin. All right, I'll get out of here now.
Thanks, Scott. Hi.
It's not 2:30.
It's not 2:30. I know. I misjudged the time. But hey, I just gave you 10 more minutes back.
Or
I stole 10
for
minutes.
An extra 10 minutes. And we talk about Pokemon nonstop.
Yeah.
I'm just going to read off a list of all of the Pokemon that I can talk about.
Oh, God, it's pretty small.
Pikachu, Raichu, Charmander.
So, Justin, you are taking a look at Pokemon Sun and Moon for us, and your review in progress went up late last night, this morning.
Early this morning.
Okay, it's up on site now, and not a lot we can talk about, unfortunately.
Not a lot of specific details. Can talk in very broad strokes about the new mechanics and where the story is kind of heading. We are under embargo for specific stuff after, I think, basically the third island. But I think if you tried out the demo for the game, you've already gotten a good feel for some of the big changes they've made to the game.
Yeah, so quality of life stuff for the most part, like that kind of the big thing?
I think that's the most immediate. Like, as someone who's played a lot of the games, when you come into it, mechanically, it feels very, very different in an incredibly positive way. Like, every game has played around with the way the menus work and trying to... It feels like they try to make things a little bit easier, but this is the first one where it's like these changes are not only really sweeping, but super positive. I think one of my favorite, the thing that stood out for me the most, is that after you meet a creature for the first time, when you meet any creature a second time, you can see immediately, looking at your attacks, what's effective, what's not effective, what's going to have no effect. Like, that was always so annoying to me when you come up against a guy and you're like, well, I have a new move, or this is a steel fairy, and I'm a dark electric. Should I use ghost?
Gosh. But by and large, this is Pokemon, right? Like, so much of it is, I'm sure, the same, right? Jake, let me jump to you. You've been playing a little bit?
I've been playing quite a bit. I'm not quite as far as he is, but I think one of the big sort of structural differences is the fact that there's not 8 gym leaders this time around. And people who've been following this know this already, but instead there's 4 islands, I think, right? Mm-hmm. And each island has a certain amount of trials you need to complete before you go to the final trial. Once you do 4 of them, I don't know what happens after that.
Can we talk about like the broad, big story? Like, what are you actually doing here? If you're not trying to become the best that you can be.
So you are still trying to become the best,
okay.
But you're in a different set. So now there are 4 main islands,
right?
And there is a really strong trainer on each island who's called the Kahuna. because
Of
this
course,
is
yes.
it's a Hawaiian theme, and you have to build up to fighting the Kahuna. And when you fight the Kahuna, you're like, well, you're the best dude, or the best girl if you choose to create a girl. I actually play as a girl on my Pokemon adventure, but you become the best in that island, and then you can move on to the next island and face these new trials. And the trials themselves are set up similar to gyms, and I think we saw a little bit of variety with what you can do in a gym in previous games, but this one takes it in a very, very different direction. For one, when you go through some of these trials, some of them will be quizzes. Like, it's not necessarily just, here are 3 trainers and you fight them and maybe do a little bit of a mini game and then move on to the final guy and he'll give you the badge, and everybody has rock Pokemon. Like, there can be a kind of a variety of different Pokemon that you'll fight within these trials. Sometimes you have to take pictures of them. There was one that has
Wait, take pictures?
It's not quite Pokemon Snap, but and this is something that we saw in the demo as well, where you would go into an area and you have to look into like this little rock wall, and there's a Pokemon who's walking by, and you have to try to take a picture of him with your camera.
Okay.
Which is, it's fun. It's quirky. It's changing it up. And the other thing is, you're not actually fighting trainers in these battles. You're fighting Pokemon directly. Like, these are just pissed off Pokemon, and you're going to fight them on their own. And one of them, once you reach the end of the trial, is going to be a super powered up version.
Why are these Pokemon so angry?
The island life, they're bugging them.
Island fever.
Super stressful.
They're being really relaxed, and then you're coming in, you're intruding on their vacation time. I'd be kind of pissed off too. And they get super powered up with their Z move, so that's I guess the other new mechanic, which it kind of bears resemblance to Mega Evolutions and stuff they've played around with in other previous games, but now that you have these Z moves, and the Pokemon that you fight in these trials also have this super powered up Z move ability, which I actually don't use a lot, mostly because the first thing that I do when I play any Pokemon game is turn off all battle animations, because it takes such a long time. Like, I want to get through this as quickly as possible.
It's true. I do it too.
And so, but the Z move, even if you turn off battle animations, you still have to watch that.
They're like 30 seconds.
Yeah, and it's like Knights of the Round. It's not actually that bad, but it is that feeling of, well, now I have this superpower. I'm not going to use this superpowered move just because it takes so long to watch it.
Do they show you the strength of those too? Because like I used one on a powered up Pokemon or whatever, and it was supposed to be super effective and it didn't do much, and then I just used like Ember and it didn't more. I was like, all right, never using that again.
So the superpowered move you have is usually a reflection of one of your other moves.
Okay.
So it'll tell. It'll generally say like which one so the thing that you equip is equipped to a certain type of move. So the names for these are totally dumb. It's like Normalium Z for normal moves, and if you attach it to a Pokemon. Firamium Z, Bugamium Z, like for bug moves. When you attach it to that, it'll power up your that specific normal move.
Buganium Z is for dark.
Yeah, get it straight, Justin.
So like, oh, if I use this specific move, it'll power it up. And then for each of the starter Pokemon, they also have a crystal for that specific Pokemon. So I started with Owlet, who turns into Duodecim, and you get Duodecium Z to power up his ghost move.
How do you feel about the starters this time around? Are they as lovable as a Bulbasaur, as a Charmander?
Well, no. They're never going to be as lovable as the originals, but I really like the owl because he's adorable. And he has a little bow tie.
As owls do.
I think the weird thing with Pokemon is that whenever you look at the way that they're dressed, the way that they're outfitted, the way that we think about them being outfitted, is those aren't outfits. That's a part of their biology. So it's like when you look at a cute cat and you're like, oh, the way his fur is grown, and it looks like he has eyebrows and a bow tie. And we're like, well, when you look at this owl that looks like he has a nice bow tie, that's something that's protruding from his skin. Like, it's probably flaps of skin popping out.
All right.
Tight. Can we talk about how many Pokemon are in this game?
I think they've said that there's...
Yeah, I think they've said, but I don't know what it is.
Like something over 7. They've added a bunch of new Pokemon, and I think the current number is well over 700.
Are they benefiting from continually adding so many Pokemon game after game? Or
I haven't felt that for a long time.
Yeah.
My brain, I can't fit any more Pokemon names in my head after the 3rd generation. I just see them and I'm like, oh, cool. There's another one.
But the issue is they keep adding new Pokemon, though, especially in the beginning. Like you had the first game, and then the second game was like, well, we need to have a whole new set of Pokemon. But those first Pokemon were pretty good. Let's just make a copy of those, and it felt really similar. Like you start out with, oh, I met Shitty Rat. Oh, here's Crappy Bird. And then the third game was like, oh, well, let's make another dumb rat and another dumb bird.
You hate rats and birds. I'm with you though. Pests.
So this one's definitely better. I think X and Y did similar things, and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, of course, like reintroduced the same Pokemon you saw before. But even as the new games, they've realized, well, we have to go with the ones that you're familiar with and the ones you like, and the new ones that we introduce have to be a little bit different. And one of the things they're doing different with Sun and Moon are variants on existing Pokemon, and they've shown some with, like, you have Doug Trio, who has this like long hair, and
Luscious hair.
and I think it's a steel type now instead of ground.
Makes sense.
I don't know which ones I can specifically talk about and not talk about, but I know that one I can.
I know they've showed the Raichu already. So
Is Raichu different? I haven't caught a Raichu.
well,
I think it's still the same.
okay.
I feel like they've showed Grimer, and Grimer's
Fight
like
it
all
out.
super
Pokemon
colorful.
battle it out. Come on.
Grimer's like a completely different type. It's not poison, and that's also a little
Still
bit
looks like
hard.
garbage though.
Yeah,
Literal
it's like
garbage.
It's like a puddle of garbage.
a colorful puddle of garbage. That's a cool band name.
If you guys are a little tired of all the new Pokemon, why do you keep playing?
I wouldn't
Team
say
Skull.
I'm tired.
Team Skull?
Just because every time they show up, they like look so stupid. Oh man, they like. I don't know if I should hate them or like kind of like. Oh, I don't know.
What do you think about the way they talk? Because this was something you saw in the beginning of the game. You saw in the demo. They have a very distinctive.
I don't know. Like it's
It's
feel like
kind of like
it's-
watching Breaking Bad and the Jesse character.
yeah, they're all kind of like Jesse Eisenberg.
Yo, dude, man, yo, dog, I got my
not Jesse
Pokemon coming, homie. Like, but they're all like super white.
Yeah, they're like, oh, he just wrecked us.
But in general, like has Nintendo and the Pokemon Company reached that logical conclusion at this point? I feel like they kind of have, like maybe a couple games ago. Like,
Well, I mean, a logical creative conclusion, maybe in some ways, but not a logical sales conclusion.
well, no.
because
But from your perspective, you're not trying to give them money. You're trying to have a game that you enjoy and play it because there's something new about it. Like, do you really feel like it's the new things that are bringing you back, or is it just nostalgia for Pokemon?
I feel like for previous games, it was definitely nostalgia. And Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, most of my enjoyment for that, I think it had some nice additions to the series, but it was primarily nostalgia that kept me going along on that. Whereas Sun and Moon definitely feels like big additions that needed to be brought to the game for a long time. And if you haven't played for a long time, I feel like this is a good way to get back into it. If you've always hated Pokemon, if you're like, I've tried it, and Pokemon is about catching and leveling up monsters, and that's really boring. Well, it still is. Like, that core nugget of what the game is about is still the same. It's just now it's a better game. It feels like it's tighter, it's more streamlined. It's taken out a lot of the things that it felt like they held on to just because, well, we've been doing the series for a long time, and that's the way we used to do it. So let's keep doing it the boring way.
Right.
It feels like they've solved that in a lot of ways. There are too many Pokemon. I think if you're coming into this for the first time, like, that's just going to be overwhelming. But even coming at it from a review perspective, where I'm trying to play as much as I can as quickly as possible, it adds to the feel of each area that you're not running into the same Pokemon over and over again. Like, that each area, even within these islands, can feel very distinctive because I'm running into Pokemon that are familiar, Pokemon that are new, and each island has its own diverse ecology in that way.
That's a very good point. Jake, any input?
I agree with what he said. I mean, I've played all the Pokemon games, and I've been looking forward to this for a while, and I agree. Like, it definitely feels way more streamlined. But I think part of the reason why I'm still playing Pokemon games is because they don't come out that often, right? It's like, I think the last one was 3 years ago. So, like, if there was one every year, I would definitely get sick of this formula so fast because it is repetitive. It's very repetitive. But, like, I'm feeling like playing a Pokemon game. I'm feeling like playing one for a while now. So Sun and Moon is scratching that itch.
Right.
Yeah, and it's something I don't necessarily want on a bigger console. Like, they wait long enough to bring them out that it's years between releases. But it's something that fits really well with their portable systems, and it's something that definitely wouldn't be as much fun on a full console. Both because I like to play it in kind of short spurts, and I like to be able to share that experience with friends. So like Nintendo Switch can change up that formula drastically because it is potentially a console that will be more portable in some ways. And I admit it would be nice to look at it in a little bit more HD. The game looks better, but it's still a little pixelated around the edges. Like, it could be cooler on Switch, but the experience that they have now, like graphics aren't as incredibly important, and just that experience of sharing with friends and playing on around a new island with new Pokemon, it's fun.
All right. And your full review should be coming
This Friday.
shortly after launch this Friday. All right. Well, you can check out Justin's review in progress right now on GameSpot.com. Come back later in the week for his full review. Justin, thank you.
Thank you. That was fast.
Appreciate you as always. Yeah, you're out of here. Bringing on Aaron Sampson. We're going to talk about Watch Dogs 2 before we get into a little bit of Battlefield stuff. Have you played Watch Dogs yet, Jake?
I played it at an event, so I played it. I played like 3 hours of it.
So
a couple months ago.
how about this? Because I've played the most. Aaron's played second most. How about you ask us questions about Watch Dogs 2?
Okay.
Can you do that?
Yeah, sure.
Put you on the spot?
Yeah.
All right.
So, I mean, how much have you played compared to Peter?
I haven't played enough to figure out the question posed in the first one, which is who watches the dogs watching the dogs? In Watch Dogs.
Have you played enough to know that answer?
No one watches them. They get away with anything they want, pretty much.
You can pet dogs in this one, so.
You can pet dogs. There's an achievement or trophy for petting 10 dogs.
I did do that in the couple hours I played. Like a dog came up to me and like the developer was like, "You can pet that." And pet it, and I was like, "Sick."
Yeah, get in on that.
I guess one of my biggest questions about it though, because I played a little bit of the story and it didn't seem to take itself as seriously, but it didn't seem all that interesting either.
Right.
So I mean, you've played more. What do you think of the story so far?
The story is so inconsequential. It is basically an excuse for them. It's very like humorous this time, or at least it's trying to be humorous this time around, right? It doesn't take itself seriously. The first game was so dour and dreary and dramatic, like whatever.
Yeah.
So now the story is like, all right, a bunch of pissed off 20, 30 somethings, hacktivists. They don't like people using information for profit or to manipulate people, so they're going to fight back. And it's like too hammy. It's too goofy. I don't love that. But the characters are like, they're light, right? They don't bring you down at all. It's just kind of like, all right, here's a bunch of just eccentric weirdos that I can, talk to and do stuff. And then, so you go out in the world and you take on these, stand-ins for Google or like weird tech executives. It's like a bad alternative version of the Silicon Valley show, right? If it was put into a video game in that respect.
Okay.
And yeah, you're like fighting on the side of good, right? To like help out the public, but you're willing to do it at any cost, which if you're going to kill someone, you're going to kill someone while you do it. If you want to falsify evidence and have like police officers get arrested just because they're trying to shoot you and have someone else arrest them, you can do that. Like you can really mess with people, and the game never once asks you to think about what you're doing. Like the story is mostly meaningless. It's just set dressing.
Well, that's one thing I think I heard you talking about it, how it was kind of like, it's almost like you just committed terrorism. Here's some followers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is kind of weird, but if it's as lighthearted as you say, maybe it's...
But that's just it, right? Yeah, it doesn't ask you to like take any part of it seriously at all. So it's like at that point, should you think too much about it? You should think about it a little bit, but the game really just wants you to have fun, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I got out of it.
Yeah, I think Watch Dogs, the fun, like the sandbox, that part's really good. Watch Dogs, the like story and the theme doesn't necessarily make any sense just because you are really kind of an evil son of a bitch.
Yeah, it's totally
like,
conflicted.
And everybody, like, you do horrible things in the game. Like, there was a guy just fishing on a pier, and I called a gang hit on him because it was fun. And I just
Did he have
to
a permit? I mean, maybe it was justified.
I mean, he was fishing near the seals, and it's their food. But yeah, so like this guy totally gets murdered, and then the police show up, and there's this giant like shootout at Fisherman's Wharf, like Pier 39. And then the game's like, oh, you're awesome. You get followers.
Yeah.
You can't really like reconcile what you're actually doing with what the game's telling you you're doing. And I kind of wish the game, I know like it doesn't take itself seriously, but in GTA, you're kind of a giant piece of crap and you know it.
Yeah.
And in this game, like you're a giant piece of crap, but then you have these cutscenes where you're like, oh, we're the best hackers ever doing great hacker stuff.
Well, I mean, just to be completely cynical, this is crafted, it seems like for the sort of I hate to use the word millennials, right? Who are pissed off at the system, who are pissed off at, society kind of turning the internet into garbage and then using it against people. So, hey, we're going to use our freaking powers and who cares what it takes? We're going to let out some aggression. It feels weird. There are definitely times where that conflict of ideas just doesn't make sense, but it's fun.
I definitely think it has a very strong visual design
Yeah.
sort of based around the movie Hackers from '95. I found myself being a Gen X guy, immediately going to the plain clothing store and getting rid of all my clothing and turning off the music, and then I had a great time. So like the theme is very strong, and I think if you're into that visual style, you'll love it. And if you're not into that visual style, you'll do what I did.
Well, then if the story's not that interesting, you're saying the visual style's good for some people, like maybe it doesn't resonate with everyone. What about the setting? So I know we're from the Bay Area. This is what I was most interested in.
Yeah.
I did get to see a little bit of San Francisco when I played it at the event, but what do you guys think of the setting?
So the setting's great. They knocked the San Francisco out of the park. And one of the funny things was when we were just kind of talking about features to do, I was talking about all the people in San Francisco, like Bushman and like Gold Painted Man.
Oh, he just showed up.
Yeah, like and all this stuff. And like I think Mary pulled me aside and she's like, most people don't know who the F these people are.
Right.
Like you need to make another feature. So being a San Franciscan, the detail's incredible, and you'll be, mid shootout car chase, and you'll just stop for a second and be like, oh, it's a modern art museum.
Right.
And then you just peel out,
Yeah. I think, yes, there are a lot of things that tourists will recognize and a lot of things that locals will recognize, but maybe apart from like weird intersections that like stood out to me, it is things like the Bushman that I think make San Francisco a little weird, that even if you don't know who it is in this game and you see it, you're going to be like, what? And like by and large, the world is just packed with like very odd sort of things. Like there's a great amount of variety in a small amount of space. And it really helps that there's so much elevation as well. One of my favorite things to do in the game, which I'm doing now just because I want to be back in this world, is to just hop on a motorcycle and ride around, go to neighborhoods, take turns I hadn't before, and see what I find. Like, ended up at a graveyard yesterday, and I saw, like from a distance, I was like, is that a band of homeless people? And I got closer, and I was like, no, those are people cosplaying as zombies, in a graveyard. And so then I went to go, as you can, take a selfie with them, and they all knew, and they like posed as like zombies and stuff, like for the camera. Like, that was really cool. And like, there's just so much personality. Yes, that we see in the real life San Francisco represented in the game, but just personality in general. I think that can resonate with a lot of people. I hope so.
What about the size of this? Because they were saying like it's all over the Bay Area, but we weren't actually able to see the map also when I played, or we were, but I don't think we were allowed to capture it or whatever.
It's like Sausalito, Marin, San Francisco, Oakland. You can go down to Santa Clara, I think.
Silicon Valley
area, yeah.
Yeah, the map's like condensed version. So Marin County is pretty much all of the towns in Marin County smashed into one stretch.
Right. Okay.
And like San Francisco, I think Golden Gate Park kind of ate up the Presidio.
Oh, there is like
the Sunset's not in there.
Yeah, like for people who don't live in San Francisco, about the left half of it doesn't exist in the game, or it's been condensed in some way, like dramatically so.
But you'll run into all the landmarks. Like they took the important landmarks out of all of it. So yeah, I mean the world itself there's a lot of character to it.
Not a lot of characters in it.
Yeah, the characters who are there though, like you ran into zombie people. I was walking down Embarcadero and stopped some woman was like beating the crap out of her boyfriend's car who cheated on her. It's like,
oh yeah, I saw that as well. Yeah.
So then I guess we should probably talk about hacking, which is like the big thing about these games. How is it different? Because it almost seemed very, at least in the first one, it felt very like there's a stoplight, you can hack it. There's these barriers that they placed all over the city for some reason, you can hack it. There's drainage pipes you can blow up. Like, how far can you take this, I guess, would be a good question.
I only played a few hours of the first game, but from what I understand, the primary differences are, one, you can remote control other cars. You can't, like, power them off. So, like, you can't, like, disable a police car that's chasing you, but you can tell it to go into reverse or to take a left or a right. You can also hack, and I think this is new, you can hack through cameras. So you find a camera, you sort of tap into it, and then any other camera or device that first camera sees, you can make a leap. So that way you can kind of get deep inside buildings and follow these puzzles, these hacking puzzles essentially. But then there are also hacking puzzles from the first game that have returned where you have to sort of connect circuits. But from what I understand before, it was like you'd sort of look at like a screen that just like had the thing. It was like just a flat image. But now like these puzzles wrap around buildings. So you have to get your quadcopter, like your drone out, and literally fly around a building solving puzzles, which I found to be pretty good. Like, and a lot of times they add like a timing challenge to it as well. So you have to do it quickly. Otherwise, the puzzles are, maybe a little bit basic, but that definitely, from a hacking perspective, helped me want to hack fast.
Yeah.
I think one of the fun things about the hacking is the transitions that you do. So you'll like throw up your quadcopter, fly it somewhere, spot something, then jump to the camera, then find a vent, then jump back, throw your RC drone out, go drive that up and find whatever it is you were after, or solve a puzzle. And I think the way that the hacking hands off between different devices and different pieces of equipment is kind of what makes it more fun. Meanwhile, like you're sitting there cross-legged and the guard might just walk up and figure out what you're up to. So you have that time pressure to it. That part of it was pretty fun.
So then, from what you're saying, from what you guys are describing, it sounds like there's a lot of gameplay options. Like you have a lot of choice when going into a mission. Is that true? Like, can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, it's pretty true. I mean, it's basically like, you have an arsenal of guns and you can go in shooting and, the AI is a little bit wonky. If you throw in a little bit of hacking, you can screw with them. For the most part, you can hack your way pretty deep into a mission, but they will show you something that is like, you need to physically be present here. Like you can't do anything remotely. So ultimately you will have to break in. And then it becomes a question of, do you sneak or do you shoot? Or do you booby trap things, right? Which I guess sort of falls into sneaking. I would try to booby trap and use violence as a last resort. AI is really good at taking cover in this game. I was playing on a mix of normal and hard. And you start to run into enemies that wear armor. I can load like 10 shotgun blasts into those guys. Can't take them down. They're still alive. But if I take my like bike chain weird yo-yo hybrid thing, I can just choke them out in 1 second. So I would always try to do that because it was more efficient and effective. Personally. Yeah.
I ran a lot of the missions creating distractions with violence, which was fun to do because it's kind of a midway. So a building with a door that was locked, you call in a gangland hit on somebody outside and all the guards run out of the door. Meanwhile, you're sitting there with your drone and you drive through the door when it opens. So there's a lot of ways that you can approach a mission. And there's like violent distractions and there's not violent distractions. Alternatively, you can have a police officer show up and arrest somebody.
Yeah, I did play around with that. That was kind of entertaining.
And then also, I don't know, being someone who loves griefing games, I found that if you drove around in a forklift with the forklift at its optimal like height, you could actually drive through a lot of stealth sections and they wouldn't notice you. They like didn't care there was this forklift just driving through their restricted area.
That is some of the weird AI in this game. Like you can do some stuff that you should not be able to get away with, but you can. And I think it allows the game to be more flexible in terms of letting you choose your path. And even on higher difficulties, it doesn't get that punishing really in terms of like AI scrutinizing things.
One of the other fun things though is when you're in the middle of hacking, sometimes another player will invade your game and you have to stop and deal with them. And also, like, you can invade other players' games. And usually you want to watch them and wait until they're deep into something before you hack them.
Yeah, but there's a problem.
Yeah.
That's not live. It was live during the review period of the game.
Okay.
And then some people started reporting, and I eventually experienced huge frame rate problems that would occur when seamless multiplayer, as you're describing, was trying to connect. Couldn't get rid of it until you restarted the system. And we're talking like sub 20 frames per second. I mean, it was just, you didn't want to play it. So Ubisoft took servers down, told us they should be back before launch. But then last night they said, sorry, everyone, this thing isn't in the game. We're working on it. And so that's why we currently just have a review in progress up. Look, we're still happy to say the single player game is really good. I really liked it a lot. I mean, and when the seamless multiplayer worked, it was fun. But without it, it honestly feels like something is missing from this game.
Yeah.
And so basically our plan right now is we're giving Ubisoft a couple days because that is the game that will be the game for months after this point, And that's the situation we're in, but it really sucks because I love this game. And that really added that extra bit of just like it made me feel like I was part of the world, right? Like somebody could invade me at any moment, and then I have to stop what I'm doing immediately and freak out. You don't lose much by being invaded, but you stand something to gain by fighting back.
So it's kind of like, it sounds kind of like Dark Souls then in that sense.
Yeah.
Because I know they played around with that idea in the first Watchdogs. There was like a multiplayer mode where one person was being hunted and the other one was trying to blend in, and that's okay.
It. Yeah.
And yeah, that being seamless, that sounds really cool.
Yeah. Hopefully it makes a comeback. Check out our review in progress over at GameSpot.com and stay tuned in the coming days for our full review, whether seamless PvP comes back or not. If you played the game, let us know in the comments below. And that's Watchdogs 2. All right, guys, last segment, we're talking about Battlefield 1, a game I appreciate from the outside, but I actually know very little about. There is a huge fall update. I was trying to read through the notes. it is. I can't. It's so dense. I can't even begin to figure out what matters and what doesn't matter. So, Aaron, you are, I think, one of our resident Battlefield 1 experts. Jake, I have no idea about your qualifications, but
Played a lot of Battlefield 1, but
There
I
you
even
go,
looked
okay.
at that change list and I was like, what?
all right. So, Aaron, I'll start with you first. What are the biggest things you've identified that are coming with this patch?
Well, this patch gave a good boost to support, which I love because I always play as support. It's my favorite class. A lot of people shy away from it because it's a class that's a little bit more nuanced sometimes, and a little bit tougher to kill vehicles. But so here's what they've done. Their LMGs, their light machine guns, some of them had bipods and some of them didn't. And I feel like in Battlefield 1, unlike other Battlefields, their light machine guns didn't have distinct personalities. So they've done some tweaking on those, and they've made some of them better at mid-range, which is nice because it gives you more options. And they've also put a bipod on the lightweight versions of them. So now you've got these really nice mid-range guns that you can also put down on a bipod and do really accurate long-range fire. Previously you couldn't do that, and there wasn't really a reason to pick more than one or two of them. So they rounded them out better. Then they went over to their mortars, and they decreased their accuracy by making you have to wait longer for them to become accurate. So that gets rid of the mortar spam problem that they had before. But then they also gave them each two smoke rounds, which is really cool because smoke in Battlefield for good players is very useful when you're getting held back trying to cross a large stretch of no man's land. You can now more reliably smoke the enemy side of it and conceal your team when they're running. So they got buffs, which I think is really cool. Then they added some good quality of life stuff. So players who have a squad leader who's not responding to squad commands, they get kicked after, I think, like if they don't respond for 60 seconds or something like that, now they get kicked. So your squad leader is the one telling your squad where to go and where to fight.
Do they get kicked from the game, or do they just get demoted, I guess?
They get demoted. Somebody else in the squad gets it.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times you'll get stuck with someone who's like, come on, this is free experience right here. Just do it.
I mean, if you're the squad leader and you're not giving squad commands, you're just losing experience.
Yeah.
And most of the time you just tell people to do what they were already doing anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, like you really have to not know what you're doing to not, or you can just like aim at something and say, go there, and you get points and they get points for following it. So bad squad leaders are getting mutinied on, which is cool. And the other thing that they did, Suez Canal, that map, now has 5 flags. I think it previously had 3. It was their smallest map.
Is it this one? Right
Yeah.
here? Yeah.
So that's the biggest change to a map in the game.
Okay.
Let's see.
But there looked to be like almost a couple hundred changes in this log. And you had mentioned to me that you know a lot about this game, but when you look at those notes, you kind of noticed something that stood out because it wasn't anything you were familiar with. It was like a ticketing system, right? Like people earning tickets for certain actions, which is good to know, but the game never tells you.
One of the things I've always loved about Battlefield and why I think the game has such longevity is it's such a complex game. There's things you don't know. And when you read patch notes, sometimes they've patched something you didn't even know existed.
Right.
And you learn something. So in operations mode, apparently, when you take an objective, the people fleeing, if you kill them, you get tickets back.
Gotcha.
Which I didn't know. I would always stay and fight because conceptually I was holding back their advance. But I was actually doing the wrong thing. And I learned from these patch notes that I was supposed to be running for my life because you don't want to be killed in that phase. And also the attackers can get tickets back by killing people fleeing from them in that phase. So it's pretty cool. I learned something new just by reading the patch notes.
Is there anything that you guys feel like really needs to be addressed about Battlefield 1 that maybe hasn't been in this patch?
Yeah. Battlefield 1, of all the core mechanics in this game that they really nailed, I think they kind of left their weapon customization behind. They really only had, 7 weapons per class, and they pretended like they had more than that by just saying, oh, this one has a bipod, and this one has a scope, and this one's lightweight. These are things that in other Battlefields would have just been in your customization screen. So we need a couple more DLCs, I think, with a couple more rounds of weapons for the weapon roster to be full enough that I feel like it's a good unlock tree. And And also those weapons feel different enough from one another. Like, again, in the support class, I don't think the light machine guns, I don't think each one feels distinct enough from each other to justify spending the war bonds to unlock them. You just find one that you're good with, and that's it.
Is there anything the community is asking for?
Community was asking for some tweaks in operations, which they got, because I think attackers were, what was it? They were losing too much in operations.
Okay.
Which is always interesting. That's one where I think DICE is good at looking at data. And
Didn't something similar happen with Battlefront 2 when that came out? Like, wasn't, like, I forget what mode it was, but like the Empire would win every single time, like at first or something like that?
yeah, in their main Walker Assault mode, it was just a rout almost every single time.
Yeah.
And I think that happens when you have expert playtesters play the game, and then you put the game in the hands of people who are not experts at the game, and they don't know all the tricks.
Yeah.
Because it's funny, I always find stopping the behemoths to be very difficult, especially if your team isn't cooperating. But according to the actual data, the behemoths were getting dropped real fast in operations, and the defenders were winning all the time. So people should have a better time and feel like the game's a little bit more fair.
Awesome. That all sounds really good. Well, that wraps up our discussion about Battlefield 1. It's a big update. Hopefully there's more to come. Thank you for joining me, guys. And what are you going to play the rest of the week?
I'm going to play more Pokemon and Titanfall.
Yeah?
I think so.
Yeah, I got a confession to make. I've been playing Titanfall since that dropped. I love Battlefield, but Titanfall is just feels so good.
Yeah.
That's what that game's all about. Just everything in that game just feels great.
After watching Rob play it, I was like, I think I'm going to play this. And I played for like 6 hours straight. I'm like, yeah, this is pretty good.
Yeah, I still need to get into that. I'm waiting for Final Fantasy 15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was playing that earlier. Or the build we have or whatever, the demo.
You made it sound so good.
Yeah, no, not the actual game, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for joining us, everyone. That's been this week's episode of The Lobby. Come back next week, but come back at 4:30 p.m. today, where we're going to be doing a Watchdogs 2 live stream with some help from Pizza Hut, believe it or not. They're going to bring on a food artist, make pizza on the live stream, and they're also going to have, oh, there you are. Hey, Richard. And and yeah, there's going to be a couple YouTube gamers on with us as well. So come back then, and thank you for joining us as always. See you next week.